3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. How are you? Baggy here. I just wanted to give my first impressions on the new Weezer record. It's called OK Human, and it comes out tonight, actually. But as I'm sure many are aware, especially those of you in the server, hang on, let me turn off this light. As I'm sure many of those who are in the server are aware, I found myself a little bit of a leak, and I listened to the album early. I am waiting to upload this until it comes out, actually, at midnight. And I will leave a link in the description to official streams of the songs so that I can, be guilt-free. I always listen to the official uploads after I've listened to leaks. Sometimes I like to have things a bit early. But Jesus, this record, it is absolutely, utterly insane. And just what Rivers Cuomo and company are doing here, I think, is the start of what may very well be the golden age of this band, of Weezer. So, a few months ago, Weezer announced that they were delaying the album that was supposed to come before this one, Van Weezer, because of the ongoing pandemic. And so this album was implied to be the one to come first, and we basically had that confirmed midway through this month of January. Obviously, we're still in the pandemic. A lot of the lyrics on this album are kind of about the pandemic and about how Rivers has been dealing with it, but we can get into that later. There are 12 songs on this bad boy, and really, this album is not only great, but it makes me look forward more to future Weezer projects, including Van Weezer, because I already know that there's going to be a lot of good material on that record, and there's a lot of good material on this record. This feels like a culmination of what Weezer has been trying to do pretty much since, I want to say, maybe after Make Believe, because starting with the Red album, they started trying to do all of these different wacky sort of sounds. But when they did, it never really fully sounded like Weezer. There were some songs like The Angel and the One on Red. I'm a big fan of In the Mall off of Raditude. Yeah, I know that record is Garbo, but... And after that, they decided to go back to their roots with a record called Everything Will Be Alright in the end. And essentially just kind of go and try to recapture that classic Weezer sound again. And they did that for that record and then their next record, the White Album. And then we had a sort of very acoustic-based Pacific Daydream. And that record was sort of like a beach and pop themed, I guess. That and the Black Album that was released after Pacific Daydream essentially was Weezer going full into the pop sphere. And with that was a lot of songwriting experimentation that kind of caused the band to lose sight of what makes Weezer Weezer, in my opinion. And OK Human feels like the culmination of that. It's like, okay, not only are we trying something completely new, and I'm sorry if there's a couple of Discord pings here and there. I should probably mute that, but whatever. We don't have time. This is important. This feels like Weezer trying something new, rather than, just a different songwriter sort of having that level of influence over what the band is doing. I don't know how to explain it. Like, Black and Pacific Daydream, they both feel like somebody else was writing them. But this sort of gives off the vibe of, Weezer. So let's just start from the start of the record, which is the single, All My Favorite Songs. And this song is absolutely beautiful. I love it. It's so Beatles-like, and they're doing despite the lyrics being very simplistic, they're doing something really good with these melodies, and it sort of draws you in. And to me, it's like a reassuring kind of statement, like, okay, yes, this is a different Weezer record, but this is still a Weezer album. It's about how technology is kind of, or not really about how technology is corrupting us. The whole record sort of tackles that theme. And there are moments on the record where that theme is taken into account. But the big thing about this song is the different emotions behind it. It's sort of a, like it hides behind being this kind of feel good poppy sort of song. I'm going to turn this mic down a little bit because I'm very close to peaking. Actually, let me turn it back up. But it has a very feel-good melody. It's very Beatles-like, and there are these very simple, sad lyrics attached to it. You know, it kind of draws you into thinking like, okay, this is going to be a Weezer experiment. It's a good song. How good is the album going to be? And then you go into the next track, which is Aloo Gobi, or Aloo Gobi. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's an Indian dish. I guess Rivers really likes it. If I had to assume, he's a quirky guy, and he's like the driving force behind a lot of the stuff that happens on Weezer records. And this song is so, there's a lot of moments on this record that I feel are very sassy, and this is one of them. It feels like some of the songs on here are White Album songs, and some of them are Black Album songs, sort of. And this one feels more Black Album to me, as opposed to what we get in later songs. The chorus here is really good, and across the whole record there is a sort of Beatles vibe to it, and this song, especially in the chorus, has that going on. You know, and they're doing all these things with the strings. And one thing that's really cool about this record that I love, that I hope happens on future Weezer records, and I hope just happens in music in general in the future, is more albums where the songs bleed into each other. And this song, Aloo Gobi, it bleeds into Grapes of Wrath, which is track number 3. And Grapes of Wrath starts off really dark. And it's about Rivers, like, just reading books. They make it into, it sounds so much lamer than it actually is. And that's like the big thing with this record, I think, is that it's going to be very hard to explain until you can actually get into it and you can actually review it. And I don't know how much time I have to give my initial thoughts, but I love every song on this record, and Grapes of Wrath is one of my favorites. Numbers, track number 4 is really good, and you know, like it's just about how there's always these numbers on social media that we pay so much attention to, and they're out to get us. And I thought that was a really neat concept for, I think getting a little, because there is a little bit of, just a very slight, tiny bit of politics on this record. But it's more the stuff that affects all of us rather than, oh, like, something like fuck the president, for instance, you know, fuck Donald Trump or fuck Joe Biden. It's not that, you know, it's more subtle little things like, oh, like interpersonal stuff. Like, oh, social media is having a negative impact on our society. Or there's a lyric in the song that comes after Numbers, Playing My Piano, where Rivers says, Kim Jong-un could blow up my city and I wouldn't know. Stuff like that. It's much more subtle. And Playing My Piano is a crazy song. It as you would expect, it's mostly piano focused, and Rivers goes completely just ham on it. It's very beautiful, very kind of Elton John stuff. And I know I'm kind of rushing through, but that's because after Mirror Image, which is track number 6, we get into side B, where the record really just takes off. Mirror Image is a good, short little song, and that's all you really need to know. It's fun. But then you get into Screens, which has this funky little beat behind it. And it just, I was pretty ecstatic after listening to the first half of the album. But then when I got into side B is when I really started to be like blown away. And just, you get Screens, you get Bird with a Broken Wing, which is this beautiful track where Rivers compares himself to the titular kind of bird, and how things are preying upon him on the outside. You get Dead Roses, which is one of the darkest Weezer songs ever put on recording. And probably one of my favorites. That might very well be that and Screens might very well be top 10 Weezer. Like across the board. You get a short little Everything Happens for a Reason. It's like a 23-second song. You've got Here Comes the Rain, which, as the title implies, very much Beatles influence, but it's more piano. It's sort of just about how rain kind of takes your problems away. And finally, the record ends with La Brea Tar Pits, which is about a caveman sinking into the La Brea Tar Pits. It's very sad. But one big thing about this entire record is the instrumentation. And I read an article, I think it was Kerrang's article about this record, that said the instrumentation, despite being this big orchestra, it still feels like Weezer. And I totally see what they were saying when they said that. Whoever wrote that article was onto something. Because when you hear the choruses on this record, you can imagine those classic Weezer guitars behind them, and it would work so well. And here we have instead a wall of beautiful orchestral violins and cellos, string section. There's little bits and pieces of, like, the strings are the main focus of the record. And they sometimes bring in other instruments. I think the cello on this record is such a big thing. Like, it's so upfront, and it's such an important part of the whole experience. There is a ton, and I mean a ton, of good usage of that cello. A lot of these songs start off and they sound so sad, and a lot of them keep that sort of vibe through it. I do genuinely think that this is some of Weezer's most impressive work since Pinkerton, if not just the White Album and Everything Will Be Alright in the end. And one thing that I'm really glad about when it comes to this record is that it feels like something that post-Pinkerton Rivers, who had to deal with all of the critics saying that, oh, this record isn't any good, and the record flopped because of it. I think that's something that version of Rivers would be very proud that he created. Because he said in his diary, I need to stop telling stories and I need to stop making any sense. I just need to write pop songs. But here he is writing these beautiful, on the level of the Beatles kind of pop songs, and it means something. There is a meaning behind each of these songs, and it's very moving. And man, the orchestra and Rivers and Brian and Scott and Pat all did an excellent job. Jake Sinclair, the producer of this album, who also produced the White Album, he did an excellent job. And all around, this is just a not even a kick-ass record. This is just a nice record to sit down and just listen to, and it's great to vibe to. Van Weezer, if you want a kick-ass record, you wait for Van Weezer in May. But if you want some good Weezer now, to tide you over and to distract you from this pandemic and maybe help you confront some of your problems, then I think this is a good Weezer record to listen to. I think whereas Pinkerton confronts the problems of a very specific type of person, this is more confrontational of problems that we're all having right now. Problems with social media and with the pandemic and with all this crazy shit that is going on in the world right now. And for a band like Weezer to make a record about that is, it's stepping out of their comfort zone. And I really like that. I get that when Weezer steps out of their comfort zone, they made some whack stuff. But this time, it really works in their favor. And they really make it work. I think choosing Jake Sinclair for a project like this was a great decision. And I genuinely think he would be a great producer for any future Weezer album where they want to sort of step out of the box of being a rock band and try something new. I think if Jake Sinclair had produced records like Pacific Daydream or the Black Album, those records would have been a lot easier to swallow and a lot better. And even then, there's still really good songs on those records. But as I said, I'll be leaving a link to this record. I'll be leaving links to the official streams of this record in the description. There'll be like a little playlist of like topic videos. And maybe I'll link the video for all my favorite songs, because that's a good video. But this is my first impressions of this record is that it's a solid like 10, easily like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 from Weezer. It's honestly, just on first impression, one of my favorite Weezer records. And I can't imagine, because their last two records were growers, not showers. The Black Album, it kind of grew on me after a while. And then I forgot about it. This is a record that you're not going to forget. This is on the level of, at the very least, Everything Will Be Alright in the End, the White Album, Maladroit, some of my favorite Weezer records aside from the obvious Blue Album and Pinkerton. I think this is on par with Blue and Pinkerton, if not dangerously close. And I look forward to seeing how all other Weezer fans are going to react to it, because I just think this record is crazy. So thanks for listening to me ramble about a record for 18 minutes now and counting. I look forward to seeing what other content I will be creating and what other content Weezer will be creating in the future. Weezer, OK Human, Baggy Shuss, forever.